How you doing, Frankie Russo? Pre-show 103. You know, I'm gonna keep plugging this until we make it happen because we're gonna make it happen. You gotta join America's team and help America's team help the men and women of the United States Armed Forces fight this post-traumatic stress disorder. Unfortunately, they're claiming from this post-traumatic stress disorder, they're committing at least 22 suicides a day. Crazy, crazy number. It's very sad situation. I want to help the men and women of the United States Armed Forces. We're going to raise $50,000, and we're going to start it off nice and easy. Rent 2 rooms, get some biofeedback equipment, handheld biofeedback equipment, get those zero-based gravity chairs, and start. We'll get a doctor, a nurse, and get it rolling. So you got to go to see the icon, America's Team icon, click on it, go to the crowdfunding, and make a donation, okay? Help America's team, help the men and women of the United States Armed Forces. Got it? Good. Okay. So I always start with the model, bomber fraudulent. This is how I try to make sense with things, with all the information out there. Fraudulent sector service card statistically significant. It hasn't gone through the official sniff test. But quite frankly, Senate Resolution 511 claimed that John McCain was a natural born citizen. He did a hearing and everything. He was born on the Panama Canal. Nobody, according to the Congressional Research Service, they never vetted Obama personally. And the sector service card, they made that birth certificate so fake that they would talk about the birth certificate, that everybody would talk about the birth certificate and not the fraudulent sector service card. Because Sheriff Joe and Nicole Passy out in Arizona did a full forensic audit on that sector service card, and it claimed that it was never mailed. Crazy stuff. This is the Commander-in-Chief, Obama. Worked out a memorandum of understanding with the Clinton Foundation in December of 2008, attached the entire State Department to the Clinton Foundation. Judicial Watch came out with documents proving and showing how the State Department interacted with the Clinton Foundation and how the Clinton Foundation actually influenced policy. Crazy stuff. So that and the connection with the Iranian Global Terror Network, the Iranian surrogates with the Alevi Foundation. The Alevi Foundation gave $105,000 to the Clinton Foundation. I know it don't sound like a lot of money, but the Alevi Foundation was involved in a terrorist network inside the United States, 650 Fifth Avenue building, and they funneled $1.4 million to the Blind Sheikh's Mosque, and on it goes. So that's where this whole model goes, okay? Just to give you an idea. So now, let's go through some articles. It's a crazy situation, crazy times, right? We got we got an interesting one here. I'm gonna hold on to this one because I'm gonna how Donald Trump helped save. I'm a Trump supporter. That's my candidate for president. Nobody else can do this but Donald Trump. How Donald Trump helped save New York City. New York Post Steve Cuzio. Long before Donald Trump stamped his name in gold on buildings around the world, he was the most important and bravest real estate developer. Trump, according to this article, Trump doesn't get enough credit for being a transformative planner who is in love with the city. No matter how many times they watch Taxi Driver, younger New Yorkers and older ones who arrived recently have no idea of what the city was actually like in the mid 70s to the mid 90s. Notwithstanding Studio 54 and a short-lived Wall Street boom, the metropolis was reeling. Rampant street crime, AIDS, corporate flight, and physical decay brought confidence to an all-time low. Trump waded into a landscape of empty Fifth Avenue storefronts, the Dust Bowl mugging ground that was Central Park, and a Wall Street area seemingly on its last legs as companies moved out, except in Battery Park City, which was then as remote as an offshore island. Few other developers built anything but plain vanilla office and apartment buildings. Trump, almost by force of will, rode to the rescue. Expressing rare faith in the future, he was instrumental in kickstarting the regeneration of neighborhoods and landmarks almost given up for dead. Many of his brainstormers were ahead of their time. Some, like his struggle beginning in the early 70s to build what's now called Riverside South, were so far ahead it can be hard to connect the dots between Trump's works and the neighborhood transformations they spawned and inspired years later. His brick and mortar milestones are lost on those who know him mainly as a cartoonish TV personality, or are weary of his self-promotion and his omnipresent name on hotels, golf courses, and casinos. Trump himself is largely to blame for being a prophet without honor in his home city. He grew weary of the risky, time-consuming development grind and started selling his name to just about any developer willing to sign a check. The result was horrible projects like the Trump Soho Hotel, which he neither built nor owns. The regrettable result is that Trump's true legacy is obscured in pointless scrutiny of what he really owns, and the setbacks such as losing the Plaza Hotel and the Riverside South complex. A more enlightened yardstick would measure what Trump created and how projects lifted all boats around them, and it's time to commemorate them before he's lost to the presidency. 1. Riverside South. Trump's least appreciated accomplishment, Riverside South, 1997 to 2004. 2. Trump at the National Hotel and Tower, Columbus Circle, 1995 to 1997. Woolman Skating Rink, Central Park, 1986. Although the Central Park Conservancy it's almost 12 o'clock. Although the Central Park Conservancy had begun to restore ruined sections of the crime-ridden park, the long-closed ice rink remained a gaping black hole until Trump took it over. 40 Wall Street, purchased by Trump in 1995. Trump Plaza, 167 East 61st Street, completed in 1984. Trump World Tower, 845 United Nations Plaza, opened 2001. Trump Tower, 5th Avenue at 56th Street, opened 1983. Grand Hyatt Hotel, 109 East 42nd. And it's just amazing what this man has done. And he doesn't get the credit for it. So that's one article. I'm glad I read through it. What happened today? A machete Muslim man attacks Israeli Christians' Ohio restaurant. Police have shot and killed a man who allegedly attacked patrons of a Columbus, Ohio restaurant, reported Breitbart News, wounding several people. They say it's a lone wolf. The guy's a Muslim. And he asked, I was looking at the commercial on, not the commercial, I was looking at the newscast. And the gentleman that owned the restaurant was claiming that he asked him where he was from. And when he told him he was from Israel, the owner was Israeli. So that was that one. Ford shifting future auto production to Mexico as Obama signs Pacific trade deal. Donald Trump talked about this. Ford shifting future auto production to Mexico as Obama signs specific trade deal. Just as President Barack Obama's deputy signed the unpopular Trans-Pacific Partnership free trade deal during an election year, Ford Motor Company has announced it was doubling production capacity at a Mexico facility instead of enlarging U.S. factories. The new factory will manufacture hybrid autos with gasoline and electric engines, whose development has been partly funded by U.S. taxpayers via federal research programs. According to the Wall Street Journal, Ford is planning to build 500,000 vehicles at its new Mexican factory starting in 2018. That is double Mexico's 2015 production. Ford has begun to build a new factory in Mexico to assemble several models, including a new model meant to rival Toyota's Prius hybrid vehicle. U.S.-based plants will focus on light trucks and sport utility vehicles. Insiders say Ford will spend $1 billion to build the expansion factory in Mexico. That's in addition to $2.5 billion already earmarked for expansion in the neighboring nation. Ford rival General Motors is planning a $5 billion expansion in Mexico. But American auto motors are not alone. New facilities are being built in Mexico by BMW, AG, Volkswagen AG, Toyota Motor Corp, and Honda Motors. All these announcements come on the heels of new deals that offer higher wages for today's workers, represented by the UAE. You believe this?
I believe it.
So, this is crazy stuff. Unbelievable. But the plans to expand in Mexico also come at the same time Obama began pushing his Trans-Pacific Partnership trade plan, one of the largest multinational trade agreements in history. The trade deal, often derided as Obama trade, has met with fierce criticism from conservatives in Congress, many of whom fear the deal means a massive loss of jobs in the U.S. Senate. Senator Jeff Sessions, for one, has been a fierce critic of the deal, saying it doesn't protect the interests of the American people and our workers. Even as Obama's representatives signed onto the deal last week, Senator Sessions said voters should press their candidates. So, I'm not going to. Donald Trump, though, has been totally against TPP. He called it a terrible deal for the United States because it's a job killer. It's going to allow, this is great stuff for the show. He's going to allow countries to continue. It's going to allow countries to continue to take advantage of us, take our jobs, take our trade. It's bad for us. It allows China to come in through the back door at a later date and continue to really do a number on us. And it doesn't take into account money manipulation and devaluation of currency, which is the single biggest tool that countries use against us. It's a terrible deal. Wow. That's Breitbart News. Top intelligence official, ISIS to attempt U.S. attacks this year. This is James Clapper. Top intelligence officials Tuesday said that ISIS was likely to attempt direct attacks on the United States in the coming years. This is CNN Politics. And that the group was infiltrating refugees escaping from Iraq and Syria to move across borders. ISIS will probably attempt to conduct additional attacks in Europe and attempt to direct attacks on U.S. homeland in 2016, said Lieutenant General Vincent Stewart, director of Defense Intelligence Agency. That was used to be Lieutenant General Michael Flynn. Director of the Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper, who was also at the Senate Armed Services Committee hearing, estimated that violent extremists were active in about 40 countries, and there currently exists more terrorist safe havens than at any time in history. Clapper warned that ISIS and its 8 branches were the #1 terrorist threat and that it was using the refugee exodus from violence in Iraq and Syria to hide among innocent civilians in order to reach other countries. Clapper said ISIS was taking advantage of the torrent of immigrants to insert operatives into that flow, pretty skilled at phony passports so they can travel ostensibly as legitimate travelers. ISIS fighters have reportedly seized Syrian passport facilities with machines capable of manufacturing passports. The testimony follows the Director of National Intelligence release of Worldwide Threat Assessment of U.S. intelligence community. The assessment notes that approximately 6 ISIS-linked people were arrested in the United States. Clapper said more than 38,000 foreign fighters, including at least 6,900 from Western countries, have traveled to Syria from more than 100 countries since 2012. See, but nobody really talks about, I guarantee you that Iran is involved in this, materially supporting weapons, money, and I mean, I don't care what anybody says. Obviously, he's James Clapper. He's the head of the National Intelligence Agency. I'm telling you, there's no way Iran is going to allow a Sunni militia to go and be big if they don't have their hand in it. There's no way. After the Iran-Iraq war and the way Iran is moving right now with their mojo, there's no way. I can't see it. Iran allowing the Sunni militia, ISIS, to be big, to be dominant. There's no way. Iran's got their hand in some way with the oil or something where they're manipulating it to their advantage. They're very good at it. They're very good at this. I mean, I don't know. I can't get that out of my head. This is an interesting article. You don't know what Obama said at the mosque. This is by Kenneth Timmerman. This guy is a famous investigative reporter. It goes back to the Clinton days with North Korea. He wrote a book, Dark Forces, The Truth About Benghazi. He claims that the cover-up was the Quds Force. General Soleimani, he went over there, he wrote the book, he got all the intelligence over there, and he claims that the Ansar al-Sharia, it wasn't the video on Abu Yahya al-Libi, it was from that guy, from Dr. al-Zawahiri, from the head of Al-Qaeda, did that video. There were 2 videos. It wasn't those videos. Ansar al-Sharia was materially supported by the Quds Force, General Soleimani. Amazing stuff. So he's talking about this. You don't know what Obama said at the mosque, and he raises some interesting points. To give you an example, this is what Kenneth Tillman says. This is Kenneth Tillman. This guy's great. If you seek to understand Obama and his views, the best place to go is his speeches, but you have to read them in their entirety, not rely on hearing them or the media's summary of them. So that's what I'm going to just take one example to show you how he breaks it down. It's really interesting. He says the most recent example was this speech last week at that Baltimore Mosque, Islamic Society of Baltimore, which is under the umbrella of the Islamic Society of North America, which was a unindicted co-conspirator of the Holy Land Foundation trial. So they were involved in that big money laundering scheme for Hamas. They call it the Hamas financing with the FBI wiretaps, the Laura Burns testimony, the Title III surveillance, all that stuff that the FBI put together, and the Obama administration, there was indictments before Obama got in, and then the whole thing came before the Obama Justice Department, and Eric Holder and the Obama Justice Department dropped the charges, and that was a big thing. Louis Gohmert had a big thing at the Congressional Oversight Committees about it, and Peter King, Congressman Peter King, he's on the Homeland Security Committee. He made a big thing about it as well. How do you drop the charges with the evidence that was put forth by Judge Salas claiming that these unindicted co-conspirators There's ample evidence that they were involved in this conspiracy. So why not keep the investigation open and see if we can get more information about what they're doing? They just shut it down. So Obama did this according to Kenneth Tillman. Obama had this speech on Obama and reassuring Muslim Americans that they are as American as Americans of every other faith, a point that any president, Republican or Democrat, would and should make. President Obama spoke a lot of nonsense, and some of it is dangerous, according to Kenneth Tillman. President Obama. So let's start with this fact. For more than 1,000 years, people have been drawn to Islam's message of peace. And the very word itself, Islam, comes from salam, peace. Why did Obama say this? Even when Muslim websites acknowledge that Islam means submission to Allah, that it comes from the Arabic root aslama, meaning submission, and that Islam is in the command form of that verb. That's why Muslim means one who submits, not one who is peaceful. Obama says Jefferson and John Adams had their copies of the Quran. The reason Jefferson had a copy of the Quran, according to Kenneth Tillman's research, was to try to understand it in the light of what the Muslim ambassador from Tripoli had told him and John Adams. When asked why Tripoli pirates were attacking American ships and enslaving Americans, the Muslim ambassador explained that Muslims are commanded to do so by the Quran. This is back in the day. It was written in their Quran that all nations which had not acknowledged the Prophet were sinners, whom it was the right and duty of the faithful to plunder and enslave, and that every Muslim who was slain in this warfare was sure to go to paradise. That's why Jefferson and Adams had the Quran. I'll do one more. Obama. This is Obama speaking. And how do we move forward together? It can't be just a burden on the Muslim community, although the Muslim community has to play a role. Most Americans would say the Muslim American community has to play the role, not a role in preventing violent Islam from capturing the minds of American Muslims and in helping authorities identify extremist Muslims. Obama, second, as Americans, we have to stay true to our core values, and that includes freedom of religion for all faiths. This is so obviously true that one wonders why the president felt it necessary to mention it. Now here's Obama. This is in the speech. Obama speaking. This is the Kenneth Tillman frontpagemagazine.com. There are Christians who are targeted now in the Middle East despite having been there for centuries. And there are Jews who lived in places like France for centuries who now feel obligated to leave because they feel themselves under assault, sometimes by Muslims. Really? Sometimes? One would have expected that after mentioning Christians targeted now in the Middle East, he would have mentioned Jews targeted now in the Middle East. That, however, would presumably have been too controversial to say. So this is Kenneth Tillman speaking. So the president mentioned the many Jews in France who now feel obligated to leave their country because they feel themselves under assault. Then came the corker, sometimes by Muslims. Sometimes, Tillman says, French Jews have recently been murdered, tortured, harassed more than at any time since the Holocaust. And virtually every one of these attacks have been perpetrated by Muslims. This is the fake fraud president, Muslim from Indonesia, Barry Soetoro, making that speech in that Islamic Society of Burma 2 weeks ago. And Kenneth Tillman, this fabulous investigative reporter for the Front Page magazine, is breaking it down, man. It's really good stuff. Clinton cash revealed Hillary and Bill as money predators. Okay, the Clinton Foundation, the Clinton's campaign, according to the Huffington Post, we should ask whether Hillary's campaign may be repeating its self-destruction of 8 years ago. In her concession speech last night after she lost in New Hampshire, she mounted an attack on Supreme Court Citizen United decision and positioned herself as a champion to take on Wall Street. She's the most paid, if I'm not mistaken, of any candidate out there from Wall Street. Hundreds of millions of dollars. She's now debating the campaign, she's now debating the campaign on Bernie Fidel Castro Sanders. Not a good place to be. At times, she's wanted talking about the firing of LGBT people because of who they love as part of hodgepodge of constituencies she enumerated, from fire workers to hungry children. She seemed incoherent. Every sort of right. She pretty much summed up every sort of right as a human right. She suggested that she had work to do among young voters. I mean, this is like an imploding campaign, according to the Huffington Post. Now, this book, Clinton Cash, The Untold Story. So we'll see what happens. Oh, here's the rest of the article. Let's see what they say in the rest of the article. Okay. Let's see if they can show some numbers. I'd like to see some numbers. I see some. I don't see any numbers. Okay, so this is not as meaty as I thought it would be, you know? Recession talk. Is the U.S. economy running on empty? I'm not going to go into the weeds on this, but this is something we have to watch. So to me, right now, we have Donald Trump, the next president of the United States, with the grace of God to help us, bring us back as a nation. Is there another U.S. recession on the way? That's a question rattling investors, worrying business leaders, and shaping the debate on the presidential campaign trail. The answer depends a lot on how you measure the strength and durability of the recovery. What recovery? I don't know if there ever was a recovery, quite frankly. Now, in its seventh year, based on the business cycle dates tracked by economists at the National Bureau of Economic Research. There is always some chance of recession in a year, but the evidence suggests that expansions don't die of old age, according to Janet Yellen. I don't know. I mean, looking at this economy from a pure layman approach, everything is cyclical. Everything. I mean, the business cycles are cyclical. Okay, the business cycles are cyclical. So it's like anything else, right? The economy goes up, it goes down, it recovers. If you're not recovering, so like from 2008, right? Let's just say from a scale of 0 to 10 on 2008, the economy was like a 6. Obama didn't inherit a good economy. We were in deficit, 4 to 5. But then they piled on more debt onto this economy. You had the bailout or whatever. So let's say the economy went down from a scale of 0 to 10. So it went from a 6 when he inherited it. Let's say it went to a 3 or a 4. So under his reign, it went to a 3 or a 4. Why do you say that? We have unemployment, over 90 million people out of work. I just gave you evidence of factories expanding out in Mexico and other parts of the world, not in America, so jobs are not here. Now, recovery. This is an interesting situation. The recovery, what recovery? If we're at some point in time in this Obama administration, if we're at a 3 or a 4 as far as an economic performance of the overall economy, and if we had a healthy recovery, we would go back up and we'd be fine. But if we're not recovering healthy, so say we go to our performance on an overall basis is like a 5. Overall, under the Obama administration, though they give us these faulty numbers from the unemployment numbers I just mentioned, and we have many people that are garnering assistance from the United States government. Between that and the 90 million people on the unemployment line, I mean, those are not good signs. And then we have a recovery that's not happening. So when we have a downturn, we're not starting at a good place. So all I'm saying is I believe that conceivably If we have another downturn, which is not out of the realm of possibility, where are we going to go from a five, from a zero? So from a scale of 0 to 10, say we're at a five. Where are we going to go to a two or a three? It's like a depression. We're looking at if we have another. It's not like when we had a downturn in 2008 where we didn't feel it. I believe, with the grace of God, it doesn't happen. But we have to watch this because if we have another downturn, I believe we're going to feel it. Whether it be hyperinflation and milk is $20 a carton and a loaf of bread is $25, so it's going to affect our way of life, is what I'm trying to say. In a layman term, a simple, without getting into all the weeds. I think it's something we have to watch. That's all. That's my talk on that. Uh, Now, this other article, Yahoo.com, CIA Director John Brennan has said. Now, this is John Brennan. We did Clapper. Brennan's claiming that the Islamic State fighters have used chemical weapons and have the capability to make small quantities of chlorine and mustard gas. We've had a number of instances where ISIS has used chemical munitions on the battlefield. He said this in 60 Minutes, John Brennan, former CIA director. The CIA believes that the ISIS group has the ability to make small amounts of mustard and chlorine gas for weapons. There are reports that ISIS has access to chemical precursors and munitions that they can use. Brennan also warned of the possibility that the Islamic State group could seek to export the weapons to the West for financial gain. So toxic chemicals in Iraq and Syria. U.S. intelligence is actively involved in being part of the efforts to destroy ISIS and to get as much insight into what they have on the ground inside of Syria and Iraq. The release of the interview excerpts comes days after similar comments from Spy Chief James Clapper. So President Assad's regime and rebel forces have accused each other of using chemical agents in nearly a five-year war that has killed more than 250,000 people. After August 2014, the sarin attack outside of Damascus that much of the international community blamed on Assad's government, the regime agreed to turn over its chemical arsenal. The Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, which oversaw the dangerous removal and elimination of Syria's avowed stockpile, now says the declared arsenal has been completely destroyed. But the global arms watchdog has still warned of the continued use of mustard, sarin, and chlorine gas in the conflict without blaming the regime, the rebels, or the ISIS group for the use of weapons which are banned under international law. So that's that. We got 5 minutes. I'm just going to touch on this. I'm not going to get into this because this is the central banks. The new frontier of negative interest rates. I don't know how this is going to work. They're claiming that the response is they're not going to increase interest rates. They're going to go to zero and conceivably negative interest rates. I don't know how the banks are going to make. I don't know how the banks are going to make money. I don't know how this is like crazy stuff. When central banks start exploring strange new worlds, the results aren't always ideal. Quantitative easing wasn't just a change in monetary policy, but a whole new kind of monetary policy. Basically, just in layman's terms, just printing money, basically. So, so now we're talking about, they're saying based on the health of the economy that they're not going to raise rates. They're going to actually go to zero and conceivably under zero, go negative. So I don't know. It's crazy. It's crazy stuff. Put your money in the bank. If you put $50 in the bank, a year from now you won't have any money in there because any money you try to pull out, they're going to charge you ATM fees. So it's crazy stuff. I mean, there's no interest. You're not getting any interest on your money. It's crazy stuff. Clinton Foundation received subpoena from State Department investigators. Clinton Foundation received subpoena. Investigators from the State Department issued a subpoena to the Bill, Hillary, and Chelsea Foundation last fall seeking documents about charities' projects that may have required approval from the federal government during Hillary Clinton's term as Secretary of State, according to people familiar with the subpoena and written correspondence about. The subpoena also asks for records related to Huma Abedin, her tenure with Hillary Clinton at the State Department, the foundation's Clinton's personal office, and private consulting firm with ties to the Clintons. Full scope and status of inquiry conducted by the State Department's Inspector General were not clear, but this is like the State Department is investigating Hillary Clinton. She's from the State Department. It's ridiculous. Like, you believe it? Like, they're gonna, I don't believe it either. So that's that. I got 5 minutes left, so I'm going to try to get into this other stuff I have over here, because there's another one here I want to get to. So let me see here. Right. Okay. The next president of the United States, Donald J. Trump, looks like General George S. Patton. You got to see this picture. It's on my Facebook.com/Frankie Russo show. The next president of the United States, Donald J. Trump, looks like General George S. Patton. Crazy stuff. It's amazing. Congress passes tougher North Korea sanctions. Whatever. Because they did the ballistic missiles launch recently. I'm entering my 103rd show. Donald Trump, you got to vote America's CEO, Donald J. Trump, Saturday, February 20th in South Carolina, primary 2016. His recent poll in South Carolina, he's up 36%. The closest is like 19%. In Florida, he's up 48%. And the two people from Florida are at 11 and 10% in the last poll. And I got 2 minutes left, so I'm going to start focusing on the live show in a minute. I just want to get these other articles here. They're almost there. Oh, here it is. 1,400 jobs lost. Here's the workers of the Korea Corporation, a heating and cooling company, found that they're losing their jobs. The company announced it's moving its operations from Indiana to Mexico. Another one. 1,400 workers lost their jobs. Carrier Corp. You believe that? That's what I wanted to, one more thing I wanted to get. I got all these pictures of these actresses in here. It's crazy. I know, like, I don't know. I heard maybe cruise now or something. This is interesting. Now, I found this interesting. Iran to unveil drone at ceremony featuring Nation of Islam's Louis Farrakhan. So, what I found out was that Iran in February or March of last year was recruiting Black Lives Matters people that were violently protesting against America. You could protest, but they were violently protesting against the police departments in America, and they were recruiting them for these conferences in Iran. Iran is a world state sponsor of terror. They are enemies of America, and there were people from Black Lives Matter going over to Iran. And now, Iran to unveil drone at ceremony featuring Nation of Islam's Louis Farrakhan. Why am I not shocked? The Iranian regime will host a ceremony, an official unveiling of its new drone. The Shahid 129 this coming week, according to the Iranian state-controlled outlet. This news agency will be attended by Nation of Islam head Louis Farrakhan. The Tazium news agency indicates that Farrakhan, 82, will be the guest of honor and deliver a speech to mark the occasion. The Iranian president will also be present. as well as several other leaders involved in the global Islamic movement. The ceremony coincides with the 37th anniversary of Iran's Islamic Revolution, which resulted in the overthrow of Iran's last Shah, who was officially ousted from his homeland in February 11, 1979, which set the standard for the nation's planned expansionism and spread of the Shia backed dominance throughout the Middle East. It's crazy stuff, right? And that explains the Black Lives Matter thing. I'm going to get that article. I can find it. Here's another one. Okay, I got to close. Okay, so I'm going to close out. This is the Frankie Russo pre-show. We went through a lot of interesting articles tonight. So we're going to get ready about a half hour. See you live, Frankie Russo. Yeah, yeah. Remember, America's Team. You got to join America's Team. Facebook.com/Frankie Russo Show. Help America's Team. Help the men and women of the United States Armed Forces fight this post-traumatic stress disorder. And unfortunately, the numbers are very not going in the right direction. According to all authorities and all numbers that I've seen, they're talking about 22 men and women of the United States Armed Forces are committing suicide every day. So we have to do something about it. We're gonna reach our funding goal. It's gonna take some time, but I'm gonna get there. Frankie Russo pre-show, yeah, yeah. See you in a few. Let me just save this.
Good. Save.